emphasis is upon the big three priorities: health and medicine, economic growth, military industry, complex, and it's to be driven by a funding agenda that emphasises the importance of impact over the short and medium term. And so we are actually reinforcing those pathologies. Now, for the most part, Kerr was concerned to provide sociological description, despite being an economist, rather than philosophical insight. But he argued that there can be no way back from the multiversity to an earlier idea of the university, and I tend to agree with him. But it's important to recognise that what I'm going to argue are the necessary public functions of the university are part of the same process of development that now seems to be calling them into question. One doesn't have to hark back to see what the public functions of the university are. One has to pinpoint the process in which the multiversity was brought into being and recognise that public functions were part of it to understand now why public functions are being argued to be not a part of it. And for Kerr, the atrophy of the public functions of the university represented a potential crisis in the culture of the society which was allowing them to atrophy, because it was a crisis in the advancement of trained intelligence. And what the future required, he argued, was precisely trained intelligence. And to be arguing for that was not, in Kerr's term, to be nostalgic for a past which one would, just by virtue of it being nostalgic, anyway, misrepresent. Now, Kerr takes a phrase from Whitehead, but a similar term is used by the American pragmatist philosopher, and I would also say deeply reparative pragmatist philosopher, John Dewey, in his idea of collective intelligence. And I suggest that it's through the idea of the public university as an instrument for collective intelligence that we can begin to develop a clear idea of its functions, and at the same time understand the role of dissent within collective intelligence, because after all, the topic is discourses of dissent. Why are they important and necessary? Dewey defines the operation of collective intelligence in terms of how it serves the public and its problems. It's important that Dewey does not associate the public with the state, but argues that the public is a category independent of the state and prior to it. Dewey also develops the concept of the social self, of the individual who forms associations and is in turn formed by them. In all of this, Dewey's idea of a public and of the several nature of publics is crucial. It contains a strong idea of democracy associated with democracy and dialogue, but does not deny that there will be functionally differentiated publics whose articulation will be an issue. And equally, his idea of the public does not depend upon an ideal form that acts as a regulatory idea for critique. So, again, it's reparative rather than utopian in its orientation. The key to his definition of a public is contained in the idea of action in the world having effects and consequences that are ramified and impact others who are not the initiators of the action. Essentially, all action is associative, but a public is brought into being in consequence of being indirectly and seriously affected by those actions of other groups. And part of his analysis of the problem of modern democracy is concerned with the imbalance in the development of associations and the proliferation of problems in areas where publics cannot properly defend themselves. The task of collective intelligence is to bring those problems to light and to address them, and the university, importantly, is one of the crucial sites for the development of that intelligence, and also for learning what it might be, what collective intelligence and its operation might be, in the associated life that is the university. And of course, as we heard earlier, Brown envisages university-level courses to be given by providers that are not universities. So the market model of Brown as an attack upon associated life is an attack upon the very idea of what the university is as a community or series of communities. Dewey was also confronting the idea of an eclipse of the public associated with the idea that modern politics was too complex and ought to be left to the state and its technocratic experts. That's part of our current impact agenda. Importantly, he was also criticising the idea of the individual free of associations, which is the individual of liberal economic theory, the naturalness of economic laws embodied in market exchanges. Because what that idea of the individual does is creates the idea that politically made collective decisions are necessarily problematic and should be minimised. Market ideology then also produces an eclipse of the public. So there's a double risk going on as far as Dewey is concerned. The eclipse of the public produced by within liberal economic theory, and the eclipse in the public created by the idea of the state as embodying and calling upon technocratic expertise. So market ideology renders the idea of the public nugatory, just as it is precisely in Brown's market ideology that effaces the public functions of the university. The public functions of the university are effaced by Brown precisely because Brown has no idea of the public. On this basis, we can see that the eclipse of the public is the eclipse of collective intelligence, making public life the outcome of the market and the operation of technical expertise. But also we can see that reforms to higher education, actually I kept telling myself not to call them reforms, because something that accentuates pathology should not be dignified with the definition of reform. The policies are designed to reinforce just those pathologies of the multiversity that undermines its functions for the public. The public university is necessary precisely because it answers a need. And Dewey was saying what the need is. The essential need is the improvement of the methods and conditions of debate, discussion and persuasion. That is the problem of the public. And in answering that need, the public university would reconnect with its social mission.